Ever since I first heard that there was going to be an open world Harry Potter game a couple of years ago, my interest was piqued. I mean, it just made sense, like we should have gotten a game like this a long time ago, given the ridiculous popularity of open world games today, and the fact that Harry Potter already has a massive fan base and source material to draw from, not to mention it being a dream so many Harry Potter fans have shared over the past 2 decades at this point. It was only a matter of time before we got a modern open world Harry Potter game, and Hogwarts Legacy in many ways I think is that game people dreamed of. Now, personally, I was always more of a Star Wars fan growing up. That was kind of my big die-hard franchise, but I always enjoyed Harry Potter and thought it was a given that it needed some type of open world game like this. And I think Hogwarts Legacy delivered almost exactly on the kind of experience I imagined, where you're a student at Hogwarts, you can roam the halls and explore the castle, go to classes, and even check out the surrounding cities and outskirts. I think regardless of how good Hogwarts Legacy actually was as an open world game, it would have done well because of the mass following the IP has. But it also helps that it's actually a really solid open world game that's better than a good majority of the mediocrity we get from the genre. In many ways, Hogwarts Legacy is a dream game that has come true. I think what's perhaps the most impressive part about Hogwarts Legacy though is the studio behind it, Avalanche Software. It's a pretty incredible story for the studio, starting out making toy-to-life games for various Disney movies like Cars, Toy Story, and Disney Infinity. In fact, their last game before Hogwarts Legacy was the Cars 3 game that was released in 2017. However, because of the decline in interest in toy-to-life games, Disney closed the whole operation down, including Avalanche, until it was acquired and reopened by Warner Bros. And 6 years later, Avalanche Software is better than ever with one of the best-selling AAA releases of the year. To think that a studio that spent almost 20 years making toy-to-life Disney games was capable of such a massive game and achievement is pretty shocking. It makes you think what other studios and developers could be capable of if given the chance. And to think for the studio's first time making this kind of massive open world game, and that they were able to do it better than a large majority of other games with studios that solely make these kinds of games, is unbelievable. Now, I'm not gonna oversell it. It's not one of the best open worlds ever made, but it's definitely on the higher end side and better than a vast majority, I'd say. It's evident when a studio actually cares about the source material and IP they're working on, and that passion shows in the game. The detail and accuracy of Hogwarts and the little Easter eggs and references sprinkled throughout the game, the sheer amount of lore alone, only genuine fans could be capable of something like this, and I think that really shows. This is also a little thing, but I love that they had these extended gameplay showings months before the game was even released, and how candid the developers were about where the game was and what we could expect from it. Not only does it show they're proud of the game they've made, but they were very transparent with the community. It's something you rarely see, and I personally really appreciated that. I wasn't even entirely sure for a while if I wanted to make a video on this game, but these showcases are what got me interested. Hogwarts Legacy is quite the marvel, especially when you consider the history of Avalanche and that this is their first crack at a large open world game like this, and that they managed to do it better than companies who've been making games like this for decades at this point. Whatever they do in the future, whether that's a sequel or another big open world project, Avalanche has certainly proven themselves in just how much potential they have. Now, what makes Hogwarts Legacy better than your average open world game? Well, a lot of it has to do with the open world itself. For starters, the school Hogwarts is incredibly well made. It's packed full of students doing different magical tasks or engaging in conversations. You can stumble upon some pretty funny moments happening within the school.
Come now, Annabelle, it was a long time ago! Leave me be! If I could undo all that happened that day, I would.
They are little things, and some games wouldn't include these fun little moments like this, but those little things add up to be a lot and make a more immersive and lived-in world. Hogwarts is absolutely massive, and thank God for the little waypoint system, or I would have been lost for 60 hours. Seeing some of the iconic locations from the movies is obviously awesome, and even some places that weren't seen in the movies but mentioned in the books. Having all the students constantly roaming around the school generally helps with immersion as well. However, I do wish they had a little bit more of a reaction to your actions, like some extra voice lines or reactions to when you start hitting them with your spells. They just kind of stand there and feel a little inanimate sometimes, but that's a very minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. I was kind of worried that the areas outside the castle may feel a little barren and bland in comparison to Hogwarts, but that, to my delight, was for the most part not the case. There's plenty of little towns, hamlets, and of course the bustling city of Hogsmeade, which also looked fantastic and was a lot of fun to explore. Hogwarts Legacy nails what makes an immersive and engaging open world. I always like to compare these games to The Witcher 3, my favorite open world game of all time, and the game that set the standard for what a lot of open world games look like now. There's plenty of things to do in the world, whether it's side quests, Merlin trials, random enemy encounters, or arenas, even something as simple as popping balloons. Whenever you're exploring, there's always something to do. You'll always come across something to keep you engaged and not tuning out on your way from point A to point B. It's something The Witcher 3 nailed, and I found a very similar concept in Hogwarts Legacy. All of that mixed with hidden locations, little interactable objects. Again, little things that really add up and make a big difference. It makes for a very rewarding exploration experience. Exploring in Hogwarts Legacy is fun. In fact, I dare say it was my favorite part of the game because I was always finding something to do and being compensated and rewarded accordingly for it. I would just wander off, not following any quest, and could get lost exploring for hours. Open world games that are able to offer that kind of exploration are the best. Now, it's not perfect. I thought the game was a tad too long, and the exploration eventually got stale and a bit repetitive, especially once you've done all the different Merlin trials and everything. I did get a little burnt out of it by the end, but the core of it is very enjoyable, and I had a great time with exploration, especially in earlier portions of the game. But again, I think they well understood what made a fun, engaging open world, while capturing that magic feeling of Harry Potter and everything that entails. It has the dedicated camera angles and cutscenes for side quests, and a good array of choices for each quest, again, like The Witcher 3, and while I don't think the stories or quest lines were as deep or well written as The Witcher 3's, they've got the general formula of it down. It also helps that this world is just really fun to traverse. Once you get your broom a couple of hours into the game, it makes going through the world so enjoyable. A lot of open world games struggle to make traversal fun and engaging, and luckily Hogwarts Legacy has the benefit of magic, so you can use your broom to zip around the world, and eventually even a magical beast. The broom also has upgrades you can make to it as you progress through the game, which makes it even faster. You're obviously not allowed to fly everywhere since some areas are designated as no-fly zones, and there were a bit more invisible barriers than I would have liked in the world. It would have been really cool to fly over the mountains and everything, but I understand there's limitations to how much they could allow you to fly through in the world. I also like how they took a page out of Bully's playbook by having the world change through the different seasons as the school year progresses. It gives a fresh new aesthetic to the world. It makes everything feel a bit new. It really helps refresh the experience, which is needed when you have such a long game. That and environmental variety, which there is plenty of, with areas like the Forbidden Forest, all sorts of different caves, or even the incredibly massive, detailed trial rooms. The Room of Requirement was fun to customize and manage, getting to capture all sorts of different beasts and then groom, feed, play, and and even breed them, all the different potions and plants you can brew and grow. It was a very satisfying loop and serves as a home base essentially. I love how much customization and creativity it allows for. I mean, you can spend hours customizing all of that. I'm sure it had all you interior decorators out there completely consumed. The world itself is also far bigger than I was expecting, and more regions of it opened up as I got further into the game. Really, my biggest issue, and this was more so a problem at launch, although it's still a bit of an issue, was with the frame drops on PC, particularly in Hogwarts and Hogsmeade. There was some really bad stuttering, but there is some good fixes on YouTube, and even some mods that really helped, albeit it's still not perfect, or at least not for me. I mean, I'm not surprised though, all things considered. Being able to go through all the massive areas of Hogwarts without loading screens is a very impressive feat, and I think it works quite well, but the stuttering and frame drops were certainly frustrating. Another kind of small and annoying thing, and maybe this is just a personal pet peeve, but there's so many repeated voice lines. I know they already reduced the frequency of how often the Floo Flame Lady talks, but even your own character is constantly repeating the same lines. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "All roads lead back to Hogsmeade," or "Does it get any more cozy than Hogsmeade?" or the various generic lines they repeat every time you take out a group of enemies.
Ranrock has fooled you all, to your demise.
It drove me a little crazy, and luckily it seems like something they've addressed a bit with updates, but it's certainly a lot. Most games have similar issues with repeated dialogue, but not to the frequency of Hogwarts Legacy. Anyways, those issues aside, like I said, Hogwarts Legacy has a very good open world. It exceeded my expectations, and the way it's paced and how all the different quests and puzzles are spread out kept the world engaging. There's an incredible amount of detail put into the world, especially in Hogwarts and Hogsmeade, and I feel like I have a much better grasp and understanding of the wizarding world and the pure scale of Hogwarts than I ever had before. One of the things I was most concerned about when it came to Hogwarts Legacy was the combat. Since, you know, you're fighting with a wand using spells, while in most games like this, you'd have a sword or something like that. In fact, the combat takes a lot of inspiration from the Batman Arkham and kind of Middle-earth games, so I was a little worried how that would translate into a Harry Potter game, but turns out those concerns were unwarranted because it's a satisfying combat system. There's a bit of a learning curve and adjustment period to it at first, but once you get a handle on it and start unlocking more spells, it really opens up and allows for so much creative potential in the combos. It's not boring to look at either, which was something I was a little worried about, but it's very fast-paced and fluid, which makes the duels thrilling. It has great progression, learning new and more powerful spells as you go. Using the forbidden curses was especially fun, of course. I spent the whole game looking forward to unlocking Avada Kedavra, and I like the story implications when you do actually get it, but the progression with the spells is what kept me playing, and it feels great becoming a more powerful wizard over time. My biggest complaint with the combat, and I swear I'm not just saying this to flex or anything, but it just feels too easy. I played on hard difficulty, and it was still easy. Again, I'm not saying that to brag, but it really wasn't challenging much at all once you get used to the combat. It feels like the hard mode should have been more difficult, or there should have been another difficulty option above hard, because I barely died during my over 60 hours with the game. And when the combat is too easy, you tend to disengage with it a little bit. It doesn't make you think or focus as much. But I do like that in combat you can use all these different potions and plants to help boost or aid you. You can actually stack the potions and their effects, so I was just doing this in those big boss fights. The The enemy variety is a little lacking. I do wish there was some more variety. I can't tell you how many spiders I killed in this game. I just think some more unique enemies as you progress to the later game to kind of shake things up more would have been nice. But again, this is Avalanche's first time doing a game like this. I just think it really would have helped with that feeling of repetition in the later game. Because the combat is very fun and allows for so much creativity, but it can get a bit repetitive by the end. I will say the inventory system was a very annoying part of the game for me, especially at first. You're very limited in how much gear you can have at once, so whenever you're looting chests, you'll constantly be out of space and have to destroy gear or wait until you can sell it all at a merchant. And the only way you can increase your inventory space is by completing the Merlin trial challenges, which isn't too hard, but having to constantly inventory manage whenever opening chests, especially towards the beginning where you have so very few slots, was frustrating. As for the actual gear itself, first of all, I love that they actually allow you to change the appearance of gear without sacrificing good stats. This is in other open world RPGs, and it should be in every single one, because yes, you want the best stats, but you also want the good fashion. And thankfully, in Hogwarts Legacy, you can have both. I like the system of using a beast's fur or items to upgrade your gear with the loom. It gives you incentive to take care of your beasts and gives them a use outside of just looking adorable. The way the gear works is very standard. You get your health, offense, and defense, and you're just trying to boost those numbers. And you can equip little runes to give you extra bonuses. Again, very typical for a modern open world RPG. I did kind of feel like the numbers were just there for the sake of being there, kind of like a gimmick. Rarely did I notice a big difference in gameplay when I got new or fully upgraded gear, but that's not really a huge issue and maybe a little bit more nitpicky on my part. And Hogwarts Legacy does have some light stealth mechanics. You can use the Disillusionment spell to go invisible and use Petrificus Totalis on unexpected enemies. Stealth is fun, it is very basic and again very easy, but I appreciate them including stealth mechanics in the game, just giving you more ways to play. And there's a little bit of depth to it with the skill tree where you can start chaining stealth takedowns or making it harder for enemies to spot you. It was a clever way of bringing stealth into a Harry Potter game. Overall, the gameplay is a lot of fun. It's easy, that's really my biggest issue with it, and it may get a bit repetitive after a while, but all in all, I think it works very well. It makes you feel like a badass witch or wizard, just slaughtering countless creatures and people as a Hogwarts student. So while of course the storyline to a single player experience like this is very important, I think even if the story wasn't the best, people wouldn't mind too much since they care most about the world and gameplay. I really wasn't expecting a crazy high quality or mind-boggling narrative from this game, but instead just a fun adventure as a Hogwarts student, and that's pretty much what we got. It wasn't an amazing story, and it wasn't bad, and was what it needed to be for this game. That's not to say I don't have my issues with it. Again, I think it's a tad long, which makes the story feel a little dragged out and slow at times. A lot of the characters are one-dimensional and forgettable, aside from a few standouts, and there's a lot of padding and filler, which is a bit unavoidable when you have this long of a story. But again, it was by no means terrible, and there were some good storylines and characters. The most notable student characters and questlines were for Natsai, Onai, and Sebastian Sallow. They by far have the most screen time of all your other classmates, and their story arcs are the longest, stretching through almost the entirety of the game. In fact, Sebastian's storyline was perhaps one of, if not the most memorable and interesting in the game. He's a Slytherin who has a sister that he believes has been cursed by goblins and is slowly dying, and he'll use any means necessary to save her. This was by far the darkest storyline in the game, and a good contrast from the rest of the game game that feels a little bit lighter and more upbeat in tone. The choices in this particular quest have weight and consequences that actually lead to some tough decisions. Of all the major quest lines, Sebastian's was definitely my favorite. There's a few others that are interesting and have their moments, but ultimately it's nothing too special. As for the main story itself, you of course get to create your own Hogwarts student who had been accepted into the School of Witchcraft and Wizardry as a 5th year, something extremely rare in the school's history. It's the 19th century, so well before Potter and the gang are even born, you quickly realize that your character has some sort of special affinity for ancient magic, and a lot of that mystery will slowly unravel as the game progresses, as the main antagonist Ranrock leads a goblin resistance and hopes to destroy wizard kind. The story is a slow burn. It starts off really strong and ends really strong, but there's a long journey to get there. I think it absolutely succeeded with the roleplay fantasy as a Hogwarts student, with the extensive customization options and dialogue choices. The choices aren't quite as in-depth or extensive as some games with this similar format, but it's a necessity for a role-playing game like this, I think. A lot of the smaller side quests do have choices, but they don't have much impact. Usually you get 2 options, be nice or be mean. A lot of the time you'll be doing favors for teachers or students who for one reason or another can't do things themselves, and then once you've done it, you'll get an option to demand a reward or do it out of the kindness of your heart. I bet you can guess which one I often chose.
Unless you want your classmates to know how you really feel about them, you might reward me for my time.
Oh, you're not at all who I thought you to be.
And you're not who I thought you to be. Based upon your diary, you seem terribly judgmental.
Fine. I shall clean you.
But that's typically the kind of choices you'll get with these little relationship quests. A lot of them are pretty forgettable and don't offer much in terms of substance. But as a Harry Potter role-playing experience, it definitely delivers. Getting to choose your house, attend various classes, learn new spells, make friends with other students. Like I said, it's not the best story ever, but it delivers on what it needs to be, and that's a fun and immersive role-playing adventure. And of course, graphically speaking, this game is beautiful. Specifically the environments, just the pure sense of scale. Seeing Hogwarts from a distance is breathtaking. The facial animations and models don't look the best or most detailed, but the game in general still looks gorgeous. Aside from those performance issues I had, which was mostly more of an issue when the game first came out, Hogwarts Legacy looks great, no surprise, and they did an excellent job designing this world visually. While Hogwarts Legacy may not be one of the best open-world games ever made, it delivered a really solid and enjoyable experience, and most importantly, brought a lot of Harry Potter fans' dreams to life. I enjoyed my time with the game. It did a lot of things right, and when you consider Avalanche Software and their history, this is so impressive. I'm very excited to see what they do next, and Hogwarts Legacy sold incredibly well, and I think Avalanche deserves it for their efforts here. I mean, I know some people who've never touched a video game before who bought consoles just to play this game. That's the kind of hype and excitement a game like this brings. And there's so many other huge movie and book franchises that would be so cool to see an open world game like this for. We're talking Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Dune, Song of Ice and Fire. I'm glad Harry Potter finally got one, and that it's a really solid open world game, and not just a cash grab because of the popularity of the IP. The world is engaging with tons of stuff to do and some incredible visuals. The combat is fun and pretty in-depth, and the story is an entertaining adventure despite some of its shortcomings. Hogwarts Legacy, in many ways, is a dream come true.